question. Let's listen
proving
in.
their case. They get to go first, and then I get to go, and then they get to go again. So I have to fit everything I've got into this. I'm going to try not to bore too deep down into the details because y'all have been paying attention. We've been watching. We really appreciate it. In this case, this is a case about Edwina Thomas and Eddie Tate and their unborn child. It's a case about who is responsible for their death. Who is responsible? Mr. Massey talked to y'all about that during opening statements. That's your job. One of the main things the state has to prove is identity. Who is at fault? No one is disputing the fact that Edwina Thomas and our poor child and Eddie Tate were killed. No one disputes the tragedy. No one. This may surprise you, given how many times we walked up to the bench and had our conversations and how many times y'all got ushered out of the courtroom. But there are undisputed facts in this case. Completely undisputed. On January 22nd of 2016, Victoria Say and Shelby Isaac went for Shelby to buy hair from Eddie Tate. Victoria parked at the Texaco, and Shelby walked over to Eddie Tate's car and got into his car and paid for hair and walked back to Victoria's car with 3 bundles of hair. All of that is undisputed. The fact that Shelby had been in his car that day is undisputed. Victoria C. told you that she got into Eddie Tate's car at McDonald's. No one in this trial has told you that Shelby Isaac ever got into Eddie Tate's car at that apartment complex. No one. It is undisputed that when they went here, they rode in Victoria C.'s car. It is undisputed that a fingerprint could be on a cup in Victoria C.'s car and belong to Shelby Isaac. Neither of those show who is responsible. One thing that is incredibly important, especially in a case like this, and the jury instructions will tell you, you cannot base your decision on sympathy or bias. And that is hard. It's hard because it is sad. And you do feel sympathy for the families that you have heard from. But just as the state told you that Edwina Thomas was someone's sister, someone's mother, someone's daughter, Shelby Isaac is someone's daughter too, and someone's sister too. And the state has an obligation, not just to her, but to the state of Tennessee and the United States of America, to follow the rules that we play by in this judicial system. And those rules are onerous. It puts a heavy, heavy burden on the state. Because nobody should be able to walk into a room and just say, somebody did this, and then be convicted of it. Not without overwhelming proof. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt. What does that mean? I do have a chart that is just kind of a breakdown. It is so high, even if you have a strong belief of guilt, You must find that person not guilty. That's how high that burden is. You must rest with a moral certainty. You shouldn't have to struggle. You shouldn't have to try to make things fit. I want to talk to you about the facts of the case, about the proof. And the first thing I want to talk to you about is the witnesses. And if you look at all the witnesses in the case, it kind of breaks down to lay witnesses, which means non-police officers, non-experts, officers, and experts. Basically. The lay witnesses. That would be two groups of people. You've got Victoria's people, and you've got the people from the apartment complex. Where Shelby Isaac lived, these are her neighbors. Y'all went out to the scene. So you know how close all of these buildings actually are to where this occurred. You have seen how good of a vantage point all of those witnesses had when they were looking down on us, seconds after the shot started. 5 witnesses, Noel Lopez and Brenda Davis, both of them identified an African-American man standing in front of Victoria C's car. Miss Davis indicates she sees him running away as Victoria C is driving. Neither of them identify Shelby Isaac. Their neighbor. Neither of them recognized anyone they saw out there that day. When you look, and I made sure I asked Victoria several times, anyone that looked down on that scene should have seen 3 women and 1 man, right? Victoria, Shelby, Edwina, and Eddie. That's who they should have seen if she was telling the truth. Is that what people got up here and saw? Did any witness from that apartment complex sit right here with no reason to tell you anything other than the truth and say a single word about a third woman being here? Every single one of them described 2 vehicles and 2 women. The woman that left in the Mitsubishi and the woman that left in the Honda. Shelby Isaac was not either of those women. Did any of the witnesses from that apartment complex sit here and say, yes, there's this photo spread that I saw that day, and I identified Shelby Isaac? There was not a single photo spread identification of Shelby Isaac made. The only photo identification of Shelby Isaac made was from Victoria C., who's known her. There was one identification made, and that was by Michael Maddox. He identified Victoria C., not Shelby Isaac. All of them put 2 women. Some of them put 2 men. None of them took 3 women. Does that make sense? If Victoria C is telling the truth, that 5 people who have no motive to lie would get up here and consistently testify to 2 women. 1 leaving in the Mitsubishi and 1 leaving. There was lots of evidence gathered. Crime scene investigation, scene investigation, clink, heard about clink? All of the investigation that was done, all of the evidence that was gathered, I encourage you to look at closely while you're in the back. And while you're looking at each piece of evidence, I want you to ask yourself, does this tell me who is responsible? I want you to, as Sergeant Smith said, follow the evidence. Because it is so hard to not feel that sympathy. It is so hard to say, I have to do what I'm sworn to do. And to be fair, not just to Edwina and Eddie's family, but also to Shelby. If you look at the investigation as a whole, there were lots of times that were pointed out that investigations were not done thoroughly. And yet every officer that testified indicated the importance of a thorough investigation. It was very interesting to hear that they were actually directed not to photograph searches of Victoria's car, not to do the Blue Star test on Victoria's. No direction to test with Blue Star Victoria's boots. No testing of Victoria's clothing, which she was arrested in that day. No GSR. No testing for labeling. No DNA. Nothing. When they searched the car, when there were no photographs, they found a broken iPhone with Gary Dotson's fingerprint on it. A broken phone. In the driver's side door pocket, along with a black do-rag and a black skull cap. In the back seat, there's a black sweatshirt belonging to Gary, with Eddie Tate's blood on it. I thought it was very interesting. I was going over everything last night, over and over, and I thought about Gary Dotson when he was testifying. And when he stood up to indicate to y'all where he said he saw blood on Shelby. It was in the exact same spot as that blood is on his sweatshirt in the back seat of Victoria's car. Isn't that strange? Isn't that strange that that's where he, the owner of that sweatshirt, would indicate? I will get to the other strange things in his testimony later. Right now, we're still focused on the Mitsubishi. The Blue Star test, which is for the latent blood. And Officer Gary testified that even if blood had been cleaned off, it would still show up with the Blue Star test because of the chemical reactions. The driver's side door panel, negative. The driver's side seat, I'm sorry, the passenger side door panel, negative. The passenger side seat, negative. The back seat, negative. Victoria's C seat, we don't know. We don't know. We've seen the CSI of the Honda. And there are some very important things that you see in that Honda. Victoria C. testified that when she saw that Honda at the apartment complex, that the window was down. If you look at the photos of the Honda from Clink. There is broken glass inside the car on the driver's side. And if you look at the picture where the door is open, you can see little jagged parts of glass kicked up on the driver's side door. This indication that maybe that window wasn't there. Inconsistent with Victoria C. Now we've also got in the Honda, y'all are going to have to forgive me because I'm not tech savvy, so I do not trust myself with a PowerPoint. So I'm going old school on this. We have got these documents. And the state has made a big deal of those documents because of the Regents receipt that is in the passenger seat. See up right by the seatbelt latch. All of those were in the car when it was received in Clink. On the seat when it was received in Clink. On the seat where Edwina Thomas had been sitting. How did those documents get there if Edwina Thomas was still sitting in that seat when they were put there? How did that happen? Unless Edwina Thomas got out of the car, was looking for something inside the car before walking around it, opening the driver door, removing any tape, getting in, and driving away to get help. Does that show you who is responsible? Also, during the course of the investigation, Victoria had told the police about some glittery boots that she said Shelby was wearing at the time of this incident. First, I would point out, not a single witness from the witness stand described seeing gold, glittery sequence boots. Second, based on her information, again, the police utilized a blue star test, which would indicate latent blood even if it had been washed off. The tops and the bottoms of Shelby's shoes were negative. In addition to no blood, if you look at Shelby's shoes, there's no mud. Unlike Victoria C., who was arrested with blood up her boots and her legs, in her car, on the threshold of the driver's side, in the driver's side floor back, none of it. No mud on the passenger side floor or on the passenger side threshold. And yet, Victoria said Shelby walked through the same mud she did? Isn't that strange? The phone records. Victoria C. told police and y'all that she and Shelby were together that whole day. The whole time, never apart. Especially not leading up to this situation at the apartment complex. You have the phone records, and you have summaries of the phone records. And I would especially like to point you to the T-Mobile phone records. These are the only records that indicate all three numbers. It is Shelby's phone that has all three numbers on it. She did call Victoria C. She did call Eddie Tate. Eddie Tate did call her. Victoria C. did call her. But why were Victoria and Shelby calling each other right before the calls to Eddie Tate started if they were together? 491-5929. That's Victoria C. 425-8927. That's Shelby Addison. 1, 2, 3 calls. Why were they calling each other if they were together? You also have ceasefire records. Those belong to Victoria C. We established some other phone numbers in addition to Victoria, Shelby, and Mr. Tate. In her testimony, Victoria talked about when she was in the car with Darian Melvin and all those conversations that happened. And both Victoria and Darian Melvin said that Victoria's mom was blowing her phone up, call after call after call after call after call. You have the phone records. The testimony was that Tanya Eubanks, Victoria C's mother's phone number, was 305-6879. We know Gary Melvin's number is 825-0224. Here we have the 825-0224. Gary Melvin. Victoria C was arrested at 5 o'clock. That gives us a time frame. From here down to here, which is at 1700 hours, which is military time for 5 o'clock. These records are not in UTC time. These records are in Central Standard Time. Tanya Eubanks calls Victoria once before 5 o'clock. You have these records back. While I have them up there, interestingly enough, when Victoria C was on direct, starting across, and I asked her about whether she called Darian when she left the jail or later that day, she told you ladies and gentlemen no. We've got Gary Melvin's number right there. And again, if you look at the last number that appears on Victoria C's phone records, it's Darian Melvin. Darian is Victoria's people. Y'all are the judges of the credibility of witnesses. It is up to you if you think that Victoria C and Gary and Darian are credible. It's up to you what parts of their testimony you believe, if any. It's up to you to take that step of listening to what they say and comparing it to the physical evidence. In order to buy the state's theory of this case, you have to believe these three witnesses: Gary Dodson, Darian Melvin, and Victoria C. And you have to discredit the testimony of Noel Lopez, Craig Hollis, Nathaniel Hunt, Brenda Davis, all of those witnesses, and Michael Maddox, in order to convict Shelby Dawson. That's what you have to do. And you have to look at the physical evidence and discredit the evidence that doesn't support what she's telling you. In the car where Edwina Thomas drove to 2116 to get help, there was those little bifold wallets that are very handy that have your phone and their wallet combined. Edwina Thomas had her phone and her wallet. In the evidence from the medical examiner, Eddie Tate had his wallet. Now the state can ask you to speculate that Eddie Tate should have had $250 on it. When they met originally at McDonald's, Edwina Thomas was not in the car, according to Victoria C. So obviously, Mr. Tate had to go somewhere to get her. Is it possible he left his money somewhere other than taking it with him? Is that outside reasonableness? When you follow the evidence in this case, when you follow the credible and unbiased evidence in this case, it does not lead you to Shelby Isaac. It does not lead you to Shelby Isaac. And if you follow the evidence and follow the law, it will not lead you to Shelby Isaac. I am going to get a little bit boring and talk to you all about the law for a minute. And I know that that's no one's favorite subject matter because we use all these weird words and weird terms and it doesn't always make much sense. That's why I like my charts. But I think it was Ms. Tate, if I'm not mistaken, Dream 4 Diary, that said, if we were to vote right now, I have to vote not guilty. Because they haven't shown me anything. What have you been shown up to now? What do you know about who is responsible through credible and unbiased evidence? I want y'all to ask yourselves that with every one of those pictures, every one of those bags, and every bit of this proof. Does it show me who is responsible? Follow the evidence. You've received your jury instructions, and among them, you've received an instruction about accomplices. And the judge will tell you, if you find from the proof that the witness was an accomplice, then the defendant cannot be convicted upon the uncorroborated testimony of this witness. If you find that witness was not an accomplice, then you will judge the weight to be given to his testimony, just as you would that of any other witness in this case. Victoria C's testimony, if you find her to be an accomplice in this case, would have to be corroborated. So again, as Victoria C goes, you have to look to Darion Melvin and to Gary Dotson. When you look back at your testimony notes, can you believe all three of them at the same time? Victoria says a black gun. Gary says a pink gun. And Darion says no gun. Victoria and Darion say, no blood, nothing unusual. Harry Dotson describes her walking into his parents' house with blood dripping onto his floor and no one noticing anything. Victoria says that Shelby told Darion something about a tag. How she would have known anything about a tag at that point, they did not explain. Darion says Shelby said that to Victoria. Victoria says, I'm just friends with Gary. Gary says, yeah, we've been seeing each other, we've been sleeping together. She's my girlfriend. They just, can you believe all three of them simultaneously? Can you reconcile all three of their testimonies to make sense together to support the state's case? Because that's what you have to do here. Reconcile those three testimonies, ignore the evidence of the 5 unbiased witnesses, and the physical evidence, or lack thereof after testing, to get to Shelby Isaac. Because the evidence does not lead to her. Your verdict must be unanimous. This is probably one of the hardest things that we ask of you. You have to be strong. You have to have your conviction as to what you believe and stand by that, no matter what every other person in that room says. And that is a hard thing to do, as some of you know. But it is important. Every one of you discussed the importance of that during voir dire, and why it is so important to have 12 people rather than 1 come to a unanimous verdict. You get to assess the credibility of witnesses. Testimony that came from here. You get to evaluate this person's reputation for veracity, their truthfulness. Victoria C. got on the stand and admitted to lying under oath without any repercussions. And after getting on the stand and lying under oath, was put back up there, after telling the prosecutor, she swore to tell the truth. Can you believe her? After all of the inconsistencies that she has admitted to, all of the lies, lying to her mother, lying to the police, lying to judges, lying to attorneys, lying to friends, lying to boyfriends, can you believe her? Or is she at worst a liar? All of the witnesses put her on as one of the women that they saw. I encourage you to compare the testimony and the physical evidence. And the testimony of all the witnesses. Because on the state's closing argument, you didn't hear much about these witnesses and what they saw And Craig Hollis today, when he was asked, are you sure that woman was the same woman? That's very, very sure. There are a lot of legal things that we're going to ask you to do, but you're also going to be asked to use your common sense. I believe it was Ms. Fields that indicated that that's important. You need your common sense in doing this job. We're not asking you to check that at the door. Following your common sense does not lead to Shelby Isaac. Why would she call someone to where she lives, around her neighbors, people who know her family? Why would she do this after borrowing hair from this man for 3 years? Who has a motive to lie? Who was put on the scene? Who did the police go to first? Who got to write and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite their story? Who had a broken iPhone, a bloody sweatshirt, a black skull cap, and a black do-rag in their car? Why didn't police test the driver's side of that car? Why didn't police test the do-rag? Why didn't police test the skull cap? Why did Shelby Isaac's DNA not come back on that bloody sweatshirt? Your common sense does not lead to Shelby Isaac. Again, it is strange that Gary was the owner of the bloody sweatshirt, that Gary Dotson belonged to that fingerprint on the broken iPhone, that Victoria C. and Gary Dotson were involved, and that people heard Victoria talk to Gary about hitting a lick that day. And I'm sure y'all remember the testimony about hitting a lick. Follow the law, and if you follow the evidence, it does not lead you to Shelby Isaac. Most certainly not beyond a reasonable doubt. Because every witness other than Gary Dotson, Darion Melvin, and Victoria C. put her likelihood way down here. The crime scene, way down there. And even if you compare those 3 witnesses, being able to reconcile them, still way down there. I'm asking you to do your duty. I'm asking you to take your own seriously. I'm asking you to follow the law and to follow the evidence and to ask yourself, does this tell me who is responsible?